commencer. Mesdames et messieurs, dear delegates. Okay, so we will start the second session. Bienvenue à la session de la plateforme pour les partenariats du 14e sommet du Forum mondial sur les migrations et développement. Après les 2 sessions de ce matin, nous aurons le plaisir d'assister cet après-midi à 2 nouvelles sessions. Comme vous le savez peut-être, la plateforme pour les partenariats est à la fois un espace d'échange en ligne et une session traditionnelle des sommets du GFMD. Son objectif est de favoriser l'échange de bonnes pratiques, non seulement entre les États membres, mais aussi avec toutes les parties prenantes de la migration et du développement. La plateforme pour les partenariats offre ainsi aux partenaires du forum l'opportunité de présenter de nouvelles initiatives en encourageant des partenariats innovants dans les domaines d'intérêt commun. Cette année, la plateforme des partenariats innove en introduisant un nouveau format de discussion. Les intervenants présenteront des idées novatrices en matière de migration et de développement. Les panélistes et le public pourront ainsi échanger de manière interactive sur ces nouvelles opportunités de partenariat et de collaboration. La première session de cet après-midi sera consacrée aux synergies entre l'intégration, le retour et la reconstruction pour les personnes déplacées de force. Cette session sera modérée par Madame Barbara Sidotti, chef du secrétariat du Forum mondial sur la migration et le développement. Chère Barbara, la parole est à vous.
Merci Cécile. Good afternoon. I guess I have another microphone. Good afternoon. Welcome to this session devoted to the topic of synergies between return and integration through skills partnerships for displaced persons. This is a topic that is often characterized as a dichotomy, an opposition. And we have here with us tonight some eminent speakers who will actually try to give us another perspective on this topic through a proposal that I hope you will find interesting for discussion. In the next 20-25 minutes, we will have a conversation here on stage to delve into this topic, and we will focus not only on what they define as the dual intent integration measures. We will focus in particular on the situation of Ukraine and of Ukrainian citizens benefiting from temporary protection in EU countries and the challenges of post-war reconstruction in Ukraine. We are then, after these 20-25 minutes, we're going to open the floor for conversation with you. I would like to invite to come on stage the 3 speakers for this session. Anne Koch, Stefan Angenent, and Daria Marshak. Please come on stage. Anne Koch is an associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs, die Stiftung Wissenschaft und Politik, where she works in the field of migration and refugee policy. Anne is a specialist in global migration governance, EU migration and asylum policy, and cooperation for development. Her work is published in numerous academic journals. Stefan Angenent is a senior fellow at the SWP, where he heads the Migration, Demography and Development Program. He is the author of numerous publications and has served as an advisor to several governments, international organizations, governments and international organizations. Stefan is also co-founder and partner of the Migration Experts Group in Bern, in Switzerland. We also have the pleasure of having with us tonight Ms. Daria Marshak, who is the first Deputy Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine. She's been working in the public administration since 2015, has extensive experience in designing and advocating for public policy reforms. Ms. Marshak has been an advisor to the Minister of Finance, to the Minister of the Cabinet of Ministers in Ukraine, and has worked for the World Bank on land reform in Ukraine. She was also the Chief Operating Officer of the innovative IT state company Prozoro Sales and head of the Public Finance Analysis Center of the Kiev School of Economics. Ann Koch and Stefan Angenet are the proponents of the ideas that we're going to discuss tonight. And what I need to tell you before we start is that this proposal is at the moment not a program, but really a proposal for new ideas, which is exactly what the Platform for Partnership, let's say, is about. Before we get into this conversation, we would like to show you a video selected by Anna and Stefan. We can go with the video.
Hello, my name is Yulia Popova. I was born in Ukrainian Crimea. I grew up and graduated in Kyiv, Ukraine. I studied philosophy in Kyiv, and also I received my Master of Science degree in Integrated Urbanism and Sustainable Design at the University of Stuttgart, Germany. I worked in Kyiv in a German political foundation, Heinrich Stiftung, and also in some NGOs with the focus on fair urban development. So that means that prior to the war, I already had connections to Germany and worked in the field of German-Ukrainian cooperation. When the unprovoked invasion of Russian Federation into Ukraine started, me and my underage sister fled to Germany. And also being a refugee, it's a horrible, traumatizing experience for everyone. I feel like I was more privileged because I had friends and colleagues in Germany, and I also understood the country, so I was very much supported by them. I think that for people who come to Germany without this experience, Germany or other countries, it's much more confusing. It's hard to navigate and to make all of these hard choices. Since I'm in urbanism, I was looking for a field that can contribute to the recovery of Ukraine the most. For me, the identified niche was the housing sector, because housing economy and sector in Germany is one of the most strongest in the world. And on the contrary, in Ukraine, housing market was very homogeneous, and affordable rental and social housing options were lacking. And now we are having an unprecedented housing crisis and destruction of the housing stock. Therefore, these experiences are extremely important. And with the help of my friends, colleague, and professional community, I actually could find an opportunity in specifically the sector where I can apply myself and contribute to the recovery later. Drawing from my experience, I think it's very important to help provide the right choices for the people, for the refugees, and help them find the jobs and opportunities in these sectors which are of relevance for Ukraine, and especially for recovery, with housing sector being one of prominent examples. And I believe a lot of support needed in this field to help people to navigate and find these choices so that they would be able to stay in Germany if they decide so, or to go in Ukraine, back to Ukraine, and still have relevant experience and relevant skills to contribute.
And how does the story of Julia relate to your work? Why did you show us this video tonight?
Well, does this work? Yes. Well, Julia has shared with us not only her personal displacement history, but also important ideas on how to support people in situations similar to her own, as well as countries that have experienced large-scale destruction and displacement. If we take a step back from this and consider the broader questions raised by stories such as Julia's, it's clear she's both a displaced person and a highly skilled migrant. And irrespective of the further trajectory of the war in Ukraine, Julia is likely to retain a transnational identity with important connections both to Germany and to Ukraine. What this story counters, I think, is the ingrained narrative in many countries hosting displaced persons, but also migrants, that there's a stark political choice to be made between promoting the integration of newcomers on the one hand, or pursuing their return. In fact, this narrative of either integration or return shapes much of the political polarization around migration more widely, setting up a dichotomy where integration and return are often considered mutually exclusive goals. Proponents of return worry that investing in education and skills development will lead to de facto integration and therefore effectively prevent future returns, whereas proponents of integration tend to shy away from discussions about an eventual return out of fear that this will result in restrictive policy measures. This dichotomy, or what we call the integration-return dilemma, underpins much of the political polarization around asylum and migration policy that we see playing out in many countries of destination, and certainly also in the one I come from, Germany. Again, I think it's important to note that this binary distinction between return on the one hand and integration on the other has very real repercussions for the individuals affected, since the services and the support offered to them are often tailored with one or the other outcome in mind from the outset. Often this means that people expected to return are precluded from integration courses and language classes, and enter a period of de-skilling while waiting in limbo for an eventual return envisaged at some point in the future. While those expected to integrate might not have access to skills trainings that would be useful if at some point they end up favoring return. Now, this is a broader story and a broader point, but the situation of Ukrainians who sought refuge in EU member states, benefiting from visa-free entry on the one hand and group-based temporary protection on the other, might be a pertinent example to question and maybe deconstruct this dichotomy to a certain extent. It raises the question, do integration and return really need to be conceived of as a binary choice? Can't we design pragmatic policy responses that put investing in human capital front and center, capitalize on the benefits of mobility, even if the initial displacement continues to constitute a tragedy, and focus on opening up choices for those affected? And maybe a brief word of explanation regarding the term reverse skills partnerships in the title of this session. Many of you are familiar with transnational skills partnerships in their sort of classical sense, and I know many of the events I've attended here over the past 2 days have referred to them. Transnational skills partnerships are a well-developed concept in the migration and development community to address skills shortages in countries of origin as well as countries of destination, while safeguarding against the danger of brain drain. And so far, most of these skills partnerships are set up so that the training takes part in developing countries, in countries of origin, being financed partially or fully by developed countries who capitalize on the lower training costs there and train cohorts for both labor markets in countries of origin and country of destination simultaneously. Our proposal now flips this logic around and suggests that while the war in Ukraine is ongoing, let's use the time to develop skills in Germany that will make a real contribution to reconstruction once return is safe and sustainable. Now, the next speaker, my colleague Steffen Angenent, will set out a related policy idea in some more detail, building on Julia's story, to present the idea of dual-use training partnerships between Germany and Ukraine. And while at this stage this is only an idea, a mere concept, we hope that this presentation will help spread the word and activate further support in moving from theory to action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for illustrating to us beautifully and really clearly this, not only the dichotomy, but the provoking idea, and I can see from the reaction on the public the interesting idea of how to deconstruct something that is perceived as polarizing very often, and that maybe doesn't allow us to see solutions that could be interesting and helpful. I will pass the floor to you, Stefan, and ask you maybe to tell us a bit more about the situation of Ukrainians in Germany, what data you have, what data we have, that we can look at that can help us understand more in depth the situation.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal. I have some slides, not too many, so just to illustrate our point. And thank you, Barbara, and also for pointing out that it is only a pitch. It's an opportunity to share our ideas. And let me add, this is a think tank initiative and not a program launched by German government. Therefore, as a think tank, we are responsible for all inconsistencies, and so please don't blame the German government for any inconsistencies in the plan. So I would like to make 3 points briefly. First, what is the current situation of Ukrainians in Germany? Second, what is the state of the housing sector in Ukraine, because that's central to our proposal. And third point, then our proposal and some obstacles, perhaps. So, what is the situation of Ukrainian refugees, I have to say, because we also have a large Ukrainian diaspora in Germany, but of Ukrainian refugees in Germany. As you might know, 1 million Ukrainian refugees have fled to Germany since February 22. They're living in Germany with a temporary protection status. They are predominantly women, children, and younger people. Average age is 28. And these refugees have an extremely high level of education. 72% have tertiary education, as you might see in the slide. Now, of course, there are significant differences between the education systems of Ukraine and Germany, and that results in problems with the recognition of qualifications, but that is another story. So what about the work ambitions and the intentions to stay and to work in Germany? The German Federal Employment Agency has recently carried out two large surveys on this subject, and the main findings are, first, currently 44% of Ukrainian refugees intend to stay forever or a few more years, 31% till the end of the war, and 23% just don't know yet what to do. It is pretty clear, and therefore it's good that we have 2 waves of the survey. The longer the war, the greater the intention to stay. That is pretty obvious from the data. And currently, 70% definitely and 24% probably want to work in Germany. And we can also see from the surveys there is a growing desire or growing interest in transnational lifestyles and mobility. So far on the situation of Ukrainian refugees in Germany. Now to the housing stock in Ukraine, to the housing market. Some key facts are 90% of the housing stock was built before 2013, and half of the population lives in multi-family houses. Now there are 3 main problems. The first is the massive war-related destruction. We have 23,000 multi-family houses and 19,000 other houses damaged or destroyed. But there is a second problem, that is poor condition and low energetic standard of the housing stock, and this, of course, now with the rising gas prices and energy costs is a problem for Ukraine. And the third problem is that the construction of new flats was partially halted by the war. Therefore, huge investment is needed. There's different estimates. Perhaps, Dario can say more on that. We found some estimates of about $50 billion needed for reconstruction purposes. I don't know whether you share this figure, but this is, of course, a lot of money. And current renovation rate, that's also important, current renovation rate is close to zero. What is needed, what is urgently needed, is a systematic approach to the housing problems. The first is repair and reconstruction of the existing housing stock. That relates to the war-damaged houses. They must be repaired, renovated, and that is also true for the war-destructed houses. There must be a demolition of rubble, replacement, and so on. And nearly 80% of the existing housing stock is, as I said, energy inefficient and needs to modernized. The second problem is the construction of new flats. There are some fundamental questions to be addressed. The first, of course, is who is going to invest in an ongoing war? Private investors or development actors? I think it would be difficult to support private ownership through development funds, and it might be easier to finance public housing through development funds. That might be, for legal purposes, for ODA regulations, might be easier. And therefore, it might be necessary to develop new ownership models in which cooperative and municipal housing sector plays a greater role, if the Ukrainian government wishes to do so, of course. But I think that would be a precondition for a greater role in development assistance in reconstruction of Ukraine. So that is, in a nutshell, some figures on the housing sector. Now, our proposal, this question of reverse transnational skills partnerships. As Anna has mentioned, the issue of return is always important in forced displacement, but it is particularly important in the Ukrainian case because the exodus has left large gaps in the labor force, especially in the construction sector. And there are also, of course, fears of kind of long-term demographic and development programs if there would be no return, obviously. Now, what we propose is a training program, or are training programs in the field, and that is why I related to the housing sector, in the fields of housing management and energy-efficient building refurbishment for Ukrainians living in Germany with this temporary protection status. We recommend the development of training partnerships in which the trainees work in German housing companies and cooperatives and at the same time receive appropriate training and further education. And through such training programs, the Ukrainians can gain expertise in the planning and implementation in these fields of energy-efficient housing refurbishment and housing management, and especially in municipal housing companies and cooperatives. And those who participate would have better choices between return and integration, or something in between, perhaps, like transnational mobility. I already mentioned the problems of the housing sector and the urgency of making progress. I think that this is of utmost importance for Ukrainian recovery, but of course, affordable housing is also a precondition for return, because the returnees have to live somewhere and they need, of course, decent housing. And equally important for return are good employment prospects. And currently, and that is, let's say, the core of the proposal, there is a lack of experts in Ukraine in these fields I mentioned, and having expertise in these fields will open up employment opportunities, of course, in Germany, because we also have a demand, but especially in Ukraine in future. Of course, this kind of double intent approaches are difficult to communicate and even more difficult to implement. Above all, because one of the questions asked is who's going to benefit from these programs? Is it the host country or the country of origin? Our answer is simple: it should be both countries, both sides. And our proposal would be to offer choices to Ukrainians displaced by war. So now I would have some main challenges, but for the sake of time, I would skip it. Is it okay, or should I say some words?
2 words.
2 words. That's not too much. So, okay, then briefly, I see 3 main challenges. It's a little bit more than 2 words, but 3 main challenges. First, of course, a precondition for this kind of training partnerships is that the refugees are enrolled in vocational training programs. And this means, and that is really important for this proposal, that means that companies must be willing to employ the refugees. Without this will of, or this openness of companies to hiring people, it would not work. And in turn, the refugees must have certain qualifications. And for the time being, that might be a problem. For the time being, many Ukrainians in Germany are still in language training courses and simply not, for the time being, available for the labor market. But that will change within a couple of weeks, I think, or a month. The second point is the funding. That's always a problem. But we believe that there are opportunities not only from federal funds, but also from European funds. That has to be discussed, but I think that is only one side. The other is that without a contribution of German employers and German housing companies, this program won't work. And third and last problem is that these trainings programs must be designed so in such a way that the refugees can use their skills after they return to Ukraine. And this can also only be ensured if there is a close cooperation between German and Ukrainian labor authorities. Without that, when designing these training courses, without this cooperation, that won't work. So I think there might be many more obstacles or hurdles to this proposal, but perhaps that is an opportunity to open up the debate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you for illustrating very clearly the opportunities, the challenges, and also the incredible equation of win-wins that you're putting on the table for all the actors, including the individuals, because at the center of your proposal there's all considerations. The win for the country of origin of the refugees, the win for the country that is hosting them now in key sectors for both countries, but also the freedom of choice for the individuals to actually determine their future, which is inevitably part of the equation too. Without further ado, I would like to ask you, Ms. Marshak, what are the priorities in Ukraine now?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen and Anna, for this research and presentation. Frankly speaking, I liked very much this word returnability that you used. I will think about this concept. But when speaking about our vision, what is needed to Ukraine, I would like to give some major highlights what we see as a Ministry of Social Policy, which is the responsible ministry for the development of demographic strategy, part of which is the migration strategy. So Actually, first, we see the dramatic, absolutely dramatic figures of displacement in Ukraine, which is one of the biggest from the Second World War. And we have altogether around 12 million people displaced in Ukraine due to the war right now, of which around 5 million people are displaced to EU countries, UK, North America countries. Around 2 million are displaced and sometimes or often forcibly displaced to Russia and Belarus, and around 5 million people are displaced within the country. And when speaking about the migration to European countries, we see that the most of the migrants are young women with kids and some portion of young men. Although those people who are of elderly age, they mostly stayed in Ukraine, which additionally make additional problems for our demography right now. And of course, we understand that such a loss of human capital is a very big problem for Ukraine from different perspectives. First, it is a problem from the demographic point of view. It's not only the immediate harm for Ukrainian demography, but it also will mean the long-term negative results and impacts for Ukrainian demography, because Ukrainian kids have moved abroad. The second negative repercussion is the losses for Ukrainian labor market. Ukrainian Ministry of Economy made the forecast, and according to its I would say rather conservative focus, around 4.5 million job places will be the deficit within the medium-term perspective. International Labour Organization gives even more dramatic figures of the deficit for labor market. But it's not just the deficit for labor market, it's a deficit for market that needs to restore the economy after the war. From the implications of the war. And the more deficit we have on the labor market, the more difficult it will be to restore the economy after the war. But another very serious focus how we see on this issue is that we need people not only for the labor market, not only for demography, but for the sustainability of the country itself, taking into account that we have a very strong and very aggressive neighbor country that attacked our country 10 years ago and is providing more and more attacks on a permanent basis. And that is why for us as a country, it's of extreme importance to get back our migrants. But here, I think that we need to speak about some principles. First, it is absolutely clear that for us, the personal choice of every migrant is important. Choice of whether to get back, when to get back, under which circumstances to get back to Ukraine. And second, we understand that even now, all those Ukrainians that are already in EU countries are living and integrating, they are de facto making our future integration to the EU as a member state faster, because usually first there are rules, and second, after the rules, the change in the trends comes. And here we have the opposite situation. First, we have the numerous migration of Ukrainians to EU countries, and only after that there will be the general rules that will make the setup. Taking into account all these trends, earlier this week, our president has submitted the draft law on the multilateral citizenship for Ukrainians, because for us it is very important to give our people the choice. But still, taking all these major ideas into account, we still need our people to get back. And the question is when to get back. As the slides shown by Stephen tell us, some people want to get back in a year, some people do not have any idea when to get back. Most of people are waiting till the situation is safe enough. But let me share with you my personal perception, because as millions of other Ukrainians, I'm a woman, I have a daughter of 9, and I'm living, and my choice is to live in the country, not to leave, not to flee to any other country. And my personal perception is that it is to live in Ukraine now and to get back to Ukraine is totally possible, not waiting till the end of the war. We have the experience of Israel, and Israeli experience shows that if you follow the rules, the safety rules, you can live in the country even if there are regular air alerts, even if there are regular risk of bomb shelling. But as driving a car, when you are following the rules, the safety rules, you minimize the risk for yourself. That is my own choice, and that was the choice why I didn't become the migrant. But just a last message. Regardless when the decision of the migrant, Ukrainian migrants, not refugees, they are not refugees, they are migrants. Regardless when Ukrainian migrants will take the decision to get back, we need to ensure the conditions that they can get back. Because some of these people have accommodation, possessions in Ukraine, and their houses are situated in more or less safety regions. But some of these people are not capable to get back to their home because their home now is on a temporary occupied territory or is ruined by bombs. And that is why, for us, it's of critical importance to create the conditions that those people who cannot, who do not have a place where to get back, that these people have such conditions. And here, as Stephen rightly mentioned, it's very important to ensure that there are housing conditions. And we understand that it's really very difficult in a very fast, short period of time to rebuild all those ruined apartments. According to the World Bank estimates, around 500,000 apartments were ruined, and around 1 million apartments were damaged by the war. But what we can suggest, there's a new instrument, for example, social lease subsidy, or other instruments, how we can, in a fast manner, support our citizens, especially those who will come back from another countries and do not have possessions and accommodation to live in. And that is why what we absolutely believe needs to be done is to create such conditions for all those Ukrainian migrants who will take the decision to get back to Ukraine. And this is the field where we need to intensively cooperate with other countries to make such conditions in place. Thank you.
Thank you. We are almost finished. We don't have much time for the debate. I ask the room and you whether we should take maybe 5 minutes to open the floor and agree that we can extend the following session for another 5 minutes so that we can actually have a bit of discussion. Is this okay? Is there any, if you don't agree and want to finish at 6:30 sharp, please raise your hand. Okay, then I will just open the floor for comments and questions if anybody wants to intervene.
Yeah, hello. My name is Bettina Fellmer. I'm also from Germany and in the Development Corporation. And I think the proposal from Anne and Steffen is quite interesting from a point of view because it brings together what is not a common idea at the moment. It's mixing development aid and internal policies, and this is something I think especially in Germany which is not common at the moment, that those two branches work together. But of the discussions I heard here everywhere in the forum, I think this is something also not only for the special situation Ukrainian refugees in Germany, but more or less for the vision for migration, that it's all coming more together. It's more circular migration, and we are talking also about return and reintegration in a positive way, and so to make it all more liberal for the individuals to have a choice, like you said, Mrs. Marczak, and I like this idea, but I think we need then more cooperation between government institutions, and also, as you said, it's not something what only government can do. We need other actors then, and we need the private sector and also the education sector, I think, because all these trainings have to be developed, and they have to be developed maybe also from different perspectives of different countries to have all this need together. So there's much of challenge for cooperation. I like this. And also I heard here during the forum of an example of Sweden, who are doing exactly this with young Ethiopians, that they are training them on solar expertise, and then they have the opportunity to go back to Ethiopia. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vice Minister and colleagues. I'm also speaking from a German perspective, sorry, but I would like to appreciate, first of all, that this respectable forum is taking up also, or putting the light on one of the, or the major displacement situations since World War II we are facing worldwide. I was also impressed to hear about the scale of destruction, is particularly not only in the housing but also in terms of labor market or labor force. As a country similar structured with an industry sector, strong industry sector, we know or we feel what this means to get on your feet again if you have such a labor gap. So the question I would, which led me to ask is, would that not also mean that we have to think not only about skilling and finding schemes how to organize returnability of refugees? We also have to think about additional labor force. I mean, I hope only emotionally that we are all helping Ukraine by ourselves, and our labor force is to rebuild like other situations in history have shown after aggression of Russia is over. But I mean, we cannot build on that. So we need maybe to organize also migration labor migration from third countries to do the job. So this might be an additional issue or challenge in this equation. Thank you.
Thank you for remarks, and I would like to reflect on your reflections. So I didn't actually comment on the proposal by Stephen and Anna, but I think that the idea that colleagues suggested is very good, because first we have the risks that some of Ukrainian migrants could be de-skilled if they do not have sufficient training and adequate job place in Ukraine. Another challenge is that some Ukrainians who migrated to EU countries and of origin from the territories that are now occupied, for example, working in metallurgical plants that are now ruined, totally ruined, these people will need the retraining and reskilling in order to be able in future to find their place in the labor market. But also for us it is important not only the hard skills and competences, but also soft skills and competences that our citizens could get in EU countries, because it's not only about having a job and fitting into the job market, but it's also about the general perception of the EU-style rules, I would say, of living. And as a country, as a candidate country to the European Union, for us it is also important that our citizens understand how EU functions and how it is to be a member of EU country, a citizen of EU country, which obligation it puts on you. So I cannot comment. Is it model suggested by Stephen? Is it could be used by the German government? It's the question to the German government actually. But here, from our perspective, this could be a very good exchange of experience. And in terms of migration from third countries, in Ukraine, the very interesting internal discussion has started. We do not have yet the clear decision how our migration policy towards representatives of the third countries should look like. We as a ministry and the ministry who is responsible for demographic strategy, we believe that first we need to fully employ Ukrainians, not to create the situation when you do not have the workplace for Ukrainian citizens, but you import the workforce from other countries. And second, that the import of the labor from third countries should be, labor force from third countries should be very well calculated in terms of scales, sectors, duration of, is it permanent migration or is it for some period of time? But of course, as we discussed previously, for us it's very important to understand the best practices and to understand lessons learned from the policy migration from third countries, not to make some mistakes that will then make us feel bad as a country.
Thank you. We have to close this conversation. It's been a very interesting conversation. I've been a very bad moderator. I didn't feel like cutting any of you, but I thought the content was really poignant, and I apologize to the audience for this. extra time we've taken. But the purpose of, I think, the Platform for Partnership is to start discussions that can then become reality out of the room. And I think that from what I've heard tonight, there is quite promising prospects for this conversation to keep evolving, whether it is connected to the proposal concretely on the presented tonight, or as Ms. Bettina was saying, also for a larger perspective on the scalability of this idea for other countries affected by crisis. Thank you very much for being with us, and well, I'm going to invite you to leave the podium to welcome another speaker. Thanks a lot.
Chers intervenants, merci infiniment pour ces présentations inspirantes. Nous allons maintenant passer à la dernière session de la plateforme pour les partenariats. Cette ultime présentation abordera la collecte des données pour promouvoir des migrations sûres pour les femmes. Je vais maintenant céder à nouveau la parole à Barbara Sidotti, chef du secrétariat du FMMD, qui sera également la modératrice pour ce panel. Chère Barbara, la parole est encore à toi.
Merci. Je viens ici pour présenter notre prochain speaker. Sorry, there is no change of moderator. It's my voice again. I hope you're not bored with it. This is our last topic for this platform for partnership, and it's devoted to data collection to promote the safe migration of women. I have the pleasure to invite on the stage Ms. Inkeri von Hase, Global Coordinator of the Making Migration Safe for Women program of UN Women. Hi. Welcome, Inkeri. Inkeri is based in Addis Ababa, but she was previously here in Geneva with us as a policy specialist on gender and migration for UN Women. And she was leading the global migration portfolio of UN Women. As a program analyst for UN Women in New York, Inkeri managed the implementation of a joint European Union UN Women program on promoting and protecting migrant women workers, labor, and human rights. Prior to this experience, Inkeri worked as a gender specialist for UNAIDS and the Southern African Development Community Parliamentary Forum in Namibia. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome you on stage for this topic tonight. It may sound dry, but actually it's not a dry topic at all. And I would like to start this conversation by asking you, why is data and gender data important for women's lives, for migrants' lives?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to start by telling you a story. So I'm based in Ethiopia, and recently I visited a women's shelter for women survivors of gender-based violence and trafficking in persons in Gondar, a border town 3 hours away from the Sudanese border. And I had the honor of talking to, let's call her Dina, and Dina told me her story. She left her village with a group of other migrants in the hands of a smuggler. Close to the Sudanese border, she was handed over to another group of men who helped them to cross the border into Sudan. Their passage took them 7 days and 7 nights without any water, any food, any shelter. At night, they were made to run by these men as fast as they could without breaks. And during the day, Dina and the other women were raped, often gang raped. And eventually, when she made it to where she wanted to get, a couple months later, she was picked up by the police because she was undocumented and deported back to Ethiopia. She told me the stories, crying, and it was very hard for me not to cry. This story illustrates some of the risks that so many women are exposed to, particularly those who live in an undocumented manner. And the story also very neatly shows, some of the that shows that every aspect of migration is gendered, from the decision that she took the way she transited, to the way she arrived in the country, the work that she performed for a couple of months, and her return experience. So what I really like you to understand is that migration is deeply gendered. It is different for men and women. And to show you what the difference is, I'd like to show you a video.
There are over 281 million international migrants in the world today. About half are women. People migrate for many different reasons, including leaving behind poverty, conflict, and climate emergencies. Women and gender-diverse people may also seek to escape deeply entrenched gender inequalities. They also migrate for work or educational opportunities, hoping to improve their lives and those of their families. Migrant women are agents of change who contribute in multiple ways at all stages of migration, bringing diverse talent and expertise. Many also send financial resources back to their communities of origin. Too often, we speak about migrants as if they were one group, but for women and gender-diverse people, their experiences of migration can be vastly different to those of men because of the gender-specific barriers they face. Despite their valuable contributions, migrant women face consistent discrimination, including racism and xenophobia. They often work informally and lack protection under national labor laws, leaving them vulnerable to labor rights abuses. Women and girls, particularly those who travel via irregular migration routes, face high risks of sexual and gender-based violence, including trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation. To these women, access to essential services is also often denied. Around the world, countries continue to implement policies which restrict women's migration, often in the name of protection. But women don't need protection. They need their rights protected, and they need to have choices. Gender-responsive migration governance means eliminating gender-specific barriers by implementing laws, policies, and services that promote the rights of migrant women and gender-diverse people at all stages of migration. In doing so, we can ensure safer migration for all. We can save lives, advance gender equality, and improve the well-being of all migrants, their families, and entire communities.
Thank you for bringing this video to this screen. I think the video very briefly illustrates a lot of the aspects of this debate. But I want to ask you, what data do we have at this stage?
Yes, thank you. And this is exactly what I'm talking about in a little bit more detail just now. Or actually, this is my very point that I'd like to make here, that we just simply don't know enough about the experiences of migrant women and girls. We have some data, mainly sexist aggregated data, but this data shows us very little. And I'm happy to share some of the data that we collected for in order to show, the experiences of migrant women. And so we already know that and this was also shown in the video, that 281 million international migrant women, half of the 281 million international migrants are women. Their labor market participation is much higher than those of non-migrant women. In fact, 63% of migrant women versus 48% of non-migrant women work. We also know that a lot of migrant women leave and search for domestic work. In fact, 13% of all migrant women workers work in domestic work. And they make up 74%, or 8.5 million migrant domestic workers, while men make up 26%. We also know that many migrant women leave and search for jobs and better lives so that they can actually help their families back home by sending remittances. So 100 million women remit money back home every year, which is half of all global remittance senders. However, we don't know anything about, what the share is of the remittances sent by men versus women, or how many, and any other patterns related to remittances. Sexual and gender-based violence, as I already mentioned earlier, is a significant issue for many women on the move. And along certain migration corridors, the risk of experiencing sexual and gender-based violence is significantly high. For example, a study found that 90% of women and girls migrating along the Mediterranean route to Italy are raped. A woman, an undocumented woman, traveling in the Horn of Africa in search of a better life elsewhere, literally has a 100% risk of experiencing gender-based violence. So these are shocking statistics that we don't have enough statistics, and this is what I'd like to kind of really make you understand. We need data so that we can actually help these women and save their lives. We also know that trafficking in persons is a huge risk for so many migrant women. Again, we are lacking sexist aggregated data. What we know is that 83% of victims, detected victims, so many victims are not even detected. Detected victims of trafficking for sexual exploitation are women and girls. And we know that almost 60% of those trafficking victims who were detected were foreigners in the country of detection. So putting these two together shows how likely they are actually to fall prey to traffickers. And another huge issue is that many migrant women do not have access to information on safe and regular migration. A study found on 23 countries found that only 53% of migrants were not aware of the risks that they might encounter at their journey. So all this to say, we need really step up our efforts to collect this data so that we can develop evidence-based policies and programs that work for women. Currently, we have been failing women all over the world by adopting what we would consider gender-blind migration policies and programs.
What instruments do we have to address this problem at this stage?
So what is currently lacking is timely and accurate data collection on the situations of migrant women. What we have is data that is collected through migrant stock and migrant flow data that already has many flaws in itself. For example, they're based on national censuses or national surveys. In some countries, they are only implemented every 10 years. Very limited information can be collected on the experiences of migrants. We have some anecdotal evidence, of course, and not to undermine stories like Dina's. They very much show what the risks are. But what we're missing is a dedicated effort to collect this data. And I'd like to make an important point here. It's not enough to collect sex disaggregated data. So this is data that is broken down by sex. We need gender statistics. So this gender data reflects the differences and the inequalities in the lived realities of migrant women. And this is exactly what is missing. And what is needed for that are strong partnerships, dedicated political will and commitment, and moreover, a specialized survey instrument.
Thank you for this. I think you have a strong message, clearly. What kind of work is being done by you and women, and what is the knowledge that you bring to the GFMD audience about your work to address this problem?
Yes. So UN Women has developed together with the National Statistics Service of Niger and IOM in Niger a dedicated survey instrument. It was piloted as part of the first phase of the Germany-funded Making Migration Safe for Women project. And this survey instrument was piloted using a smaller sample. It was then further polished and sharpened, and then rolled out to a large group of migrant women. We also developed a guidance document that on the situations of migrant women that really explains the process of collecting data. It's broadly structured into 3 areas. It outlines why it is so important to collect data and why a survey is needed. It explains the methodology as well as the 4 stages of planning and implementing such a study. And very importantly, it annexes the questionnaires that we developed for this survey.
So I understand you have tested this instrument in Niger, and you're now rolling it out this year in Ethiopia.
Yes, we will do that. Before I'm going to answer and tell you more about our plans in Ethiopia, I'd like to briefly talk about why it is so important to have a dedicated survey instrument on the situations of migrant women. So, as I mentioned, we do not know enough about the situations of migrant women. As a result, many migrant women experience tremendous rights violations and many lose their lives. What we need is a survey, and a survey that can be rolled out to other country contexts that explicitly collects information on the experiences, the issues, the challenges, and the risks of women in specific countries, where women become primary sources of information, where this information does not encounter problems such as with qualitative studies. We have qualitative studies, but often they're limited in scope, they're limited in geography, in sample size, as well as reliability. So this tool, such a survey as ours, has the potential to yield high-quality data that sheds deep and rich insights into the experiences of migrant women on a variety of issues. And such issues, would include, next to the demographic characteristics of migrant women and the more general experience of their migration, it would also include, first of all, the reasons why they're migrating, the access of services that they enjoyed, such as access to information, access to travel documents, healthcare, and decent work, but most importantly, to the distinct experiences of human and labor rights violations and multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination.
Thank you for this. I would like to make sure that we open the floor, so I will maybe rush you a little bit through the contents, but I really think it's important that we have a bit of discussion time. Is this instrument that you have pilot tested and you're rolling out easily adaptable to any context, or is it something that requires a lot of work to be adapted to other countries?
So, good news is this is a tool that is ready to use. We have these survey questionnaires that can be very easily amended according to the country needs. It's a low-hanging fruit. All it requires is political commitment, will, partnerships, and it can be rolled out easily within 6 to 12 months. And it's there, it can be used, it's available online. UN Women stands ready to support all stakeholders to make this happen.
Thank you, Inkeri. I will just try to open the floor now and see if there are any questions from the public on this, this perspective you shared with us, where it's what I hear from you is the data we have is basically too superficial. It's not granular enough for what we need for good policies that save lives or protect migrant women's rights. And somehow, to get to a good outcome, we don't need data in 1 or 2 countries or in one specific context, but of course, as much data globally. I presume that is a big challenge in the current moment, because these are new instruments you are presenting. There isn't much granular data being, let's say, gathered globally. So with this in mind, I just want to ask the audience if there are any questions or comments on the topic.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to hear you. My name is Fabiana. I'm from the city of Montevideo, Uruguay. And I have 2 questions. If you have any information on what you've been talking about how caregiving is of an important fact or not in the quality of life that migrant women are having in this situation, and how can we approach that fact in order to make their lives easier and better. And the other is a question I read. You were saying that women spend more money when they make money transfers because they rather do it personally, if I understood well. Is that related with the fact that they don't have access to financial instruments as bank accounts or something like that? Is it possible to work on giving them access to that kind of instruments to improve that situation? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I think in relation to your first question, caregiving, again, of migrant women to families or persons in the country of destination, it's something that there have been some studies that showed, but we don't have enough quantitative information, and also how it affects them and their families back home. So transnational mothering, for example, or transnational care is something that has been spoken about a lot, but it's a very good question, and in fact it's included, how care arrangements, are affecting the lives of migrant women. And this is also something that can be included in such a survey instrument. Now, your question relating to remittances, yes, many women do. There's a divide, a gender divide in terms of financial literacy, and hence migrant women are feeling more comfortable to use more traditional migration channels because they do not have access to, for example, modern telecommunication devices. And there are a variety of other reasons why the remittances for why many women pay higher remittance fees than men do.
Thank you. My name is Richard Obedi. I work as the executive director of the Populace Foundation International. It's a civil society organization operating in Uganda and in the region. Well, in 2022, we've conducted a fact-finding mission for women who actually undergo sexual and gender-based violence in the cross-border region between Uganda and South Sudan. And a number of glaring issues are happening there. Sometimes the services are not there, and sometimes we spend a lot of time and money in trying to do okay, you've been talking about data. But then sometimes we need to just address the issues head on. For instance, in the Great Lakes region, we have instruments, regional instruments. Let's even leave the national instrument. For instance, the International Conference on the Great Lakes. It's a regional facility for about 12 countries in the Great Lakes that addresses issues of sexual and gender-based violence. Actually, it's an Article 11, and it has a protocol that addresses, protocol for the prevention and suppression of sexual violence against women and children. And sometimes even the people at the border, the security personnel, the custom officials, the border managers, where some of these women cross from one country to another in the way they do their trade. Sometimes even these these managers do not understand some of these regional instruments. And you find women are exploited, they are actually abused, in one way or the other. So my appeal to you as UN Women, being a central UN family dealing with issues of women, and of course with others, why can, and this platform is actually a platform for partnership, why don't you work directly with organizations, those actually that are on the ground at the grassroots level? Because sometimes these issues are not at the national level, they're actually at the border. And these are grassroots women who go through all sorts of atrocities, abuses, and inhuman treatment. My appeal to you, as a UN family dealing with issues to do with women, especially in hotspots areas in the Great Lakes region. Thank you.
I want to take a few more questions and then we come back, please. And then up there.
Yeah, not so much. Yeah, it's a question, yeah. Bettina Fellmer again. And thank you for this very impressive picture you made for the urge and the need of data. I wonder what the obstacles are to create this data. And when you described this survey form a little bit, I wondered, I had some questions. So who should raise this data? This is not the normal statistical data. I think it's important. This data should be risen by talking to the woman, and I think this is some very sensitive thing to do, especially when they are traumatized. They are traumatized, they must be traumatized, and how they would be open also and have the trust also to talk about this thing. So I think it's more than raising data and making a survey. So how could you prepare people who would be interested in doing this data collection, prepare?
Thank you. We take, I think there was first you and then
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Carolina Gottardo from the International Detention Coalition and the Women in Migration Network. And firstly, thank you for a great presentation in Korean. Thank you also for such I think the points that you have made with regards to the lack of data on such an important issue are excellent. And also, I'm very pleased to see you and women putting this together. My questions are actually very complementary to what Bettina just said. So the first one was when looking at thinking about the methodology, what is UN Women thinking about ensuring that there will be data that comes from different regions, and that because of course we know that data on gender issues is more disaggregated in some regions and in some countries than in others, and that's part of the kind of gaps that exist. So how are you thinking about this side? And the second one is really on the role of the women, the migrant women themselves, and civil society. So with regards to the migrant women, how have they been consulted, or what has been the process of engagement to come up with this idea, with this process, and what will be the role of the women with regards, and the migrant women themselves with regards to the data collection and civil society as well? And thank you again.
We take a last question, and I guess then, yes.
Thank you. I'm Fatma Rash from the Migrant Rights Initiative, Cornell University. In fact, thank you for your presentation. And in fact, I have a question and a suggestion, perhaps. I think that the collaboration with the academics and the civil society is very interesting, because you can access to many data, objective data, non-biased data, because academics, when they do their work, they have some ethic. They have to respect the ethics and norms, and they can access to many information, objective also information about the gender-based violence and the border violence. For example, with our initiative, we have a database on the practice and the legal in Africa region, in America region, and why not if we can have also collaboration to have more information. But I think that it's very important to create and to consolidate the cooperation, the collaboration with the academics and the civil society, especially for who works according to very serious ethical and objective procedure. Many thanks.
Thank you. Shall I summarize the questions? Or there was the first question on the importance of action, and then on obstacles, and then the methodology, and I think you captured the last ones. Oh, there is one more question. Shall we? We have only 5 minutes, but let's hear another one.
Thank you so much. I think the voice is loud and clear. And I'm very happy when she started to present to us, she started with a story. It's a painful story. But that story, it's a story that you cannot get at the national level. In order to get the story, you can get it in the grassroots level. So it's very important as UN women that we also try to ensure that we do things from the bottom-up approach. The word has been loud from that side of my colleagues. From the universities, they talk about it, and also my friend Obedi Richard also talk about it. Thank you so much.
One more? Do we manage? Please.
Thank you. My name is Itzel from Bloque Latinoamericano, also from WIM, based in Mexico. My question is, if you considerate and all this information data about talking womas and condition and the return and deportation, what is happening with the women back to the original countries, what is the issues, and if you consider the methodology, and maybe the next one, or is now, about talking of these women. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions. It's so nice to see how you're engaging with the topic. And maybe I'd like to start off by saying that UN Women is very fond of its very close ties to civil society organizations, to women's organizations and feminist organizations, and grassroots level organizations and community-based organizations. So it's absolutely clear that we work very closely with these with women on the ground and women's groups in order to feed into these processes. So in an effort like this, where we are collecting data, civil society can play a critical role. For example, there could be staff members could be hired as interviewers. That brings me to Bettina's question about the methodology. And I'm needing to answer very quickly. I would love to answer each question in more detail, but in order, there are some ethical challenges, of course, in identifying in carrying out these interviews, and it's of utmost importance to such an effort that the safety of the women is guaranteed. So these interviews need to take place in a private setting, on a one-to-one basis, face-to-face, in order to build trust, and also to be able to refer potential victims of violence or trafficking to the right services. So the women need to be trained and have an understanding of the challenges that the interviewees have faced. It's very important that in rolling out such a study, that collaborations are sought with the key stakeholders, and it's typical the National Statistics Service in the country. So now, as part of the second phase of the Germany-funded Making Migration Safe for Women project in Ethiopia, we're working very closely with the Ethiopian Statistics Service, as well as IOM, in rolling out the survey. We are very closely working also with civil society organizations in Ethiopia, because this is key. To the question asked by the gentleman, it is in Ethiopia, we're also supporting migrant women returnees to share information about their experience of migration, so that they can actually speak from a first-hand experience and tell other women what they experienced. And I'd like to bring it back to Dina. I asked Dina, Dina is the woman that I talked to in the beginning of my presentation. Would you migrate again? And she said no. I asked her, would you advise other women to migrate? And she said no. And then I ended my conversation with her and I said, what are your dreams, Dina? And she said, all I want is to be able to make ends meet and live peacefully with my family and community. This is a simple request of a woman, and we can do this. And my appeal to all of you, please take this message back home. Every single person here in the room can do something about this. And this about the situation of migrant women, about the lack of evidence. And the tool is there. We have this tool. Now, my vision for this, and we are running out of time, is I'd love the study to be rolled out, or the survey to be rolled out to 10 countries in each region. And then we have this national data for each of the countries that can influence policy making and implementation. And then we have, across these, let's say, 50 countries, we can compare the trends, and we can make a comparative analysis, and we can draw up conclusions and come up with very concrete measures in order to address the situations of migrant women and ensure that their labor and human rights are promoted and protected at every stage of migration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Inkari, for being with us. It was a pleasure.
Merci à tous d'être restés jusqu'à la fin. Merci encore à notre intervenante, à notre modératrice. Si vous souhaitez venir à la soirée organisée ce soir, il y a des bus jusqu'à 18h45, donc il ne vous reste plus qu'un quart d'heure, pour vous rendre au Cube. Voilà, à ce soir pour la soirée, ou sinon à demain matin. Merci à vous.